those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Elkins. I'm an assistant professor of film and media in the department. I'll be sort of moderating here. First thing I'm going to do is introduce our esteemed panelists here and just kind of give you a brief sort of bio rundown of their background, and then maybe start off with a couple of questions of my own, but really sort of hand it over to you, because this is really an event for you to get a chance to converse with and interface with some of our alumni. So I'll start with Jenna Farmer. Jenna Farmer graduated from CSU in 2014 with a BA in Communication Studies and a Sociology minor. Jenna is an events and communications professional offering 9 years of experience in the event and hospitality industry. Jenna has excellent communications, customer service, and organizational skills that translate into successfully planning and implementing all phases of an event, resulting in diverse and high-quality production. Currently, she's putting her skills to use as the events and communications specialist for Northern Water, where she works in the communications department to plan conferences, corporate events, and tours, as well as assist with public outreach through news articles, press releases, and digital communications. Then Joel Delgado graduated from CSU in 2014 with a BA in Communication Studies and a Film Studies minor. Joel's a filmmaker and photographer born and raised in Denver. With the use of visual media, Joel crafts compelling stories to communicate complex ideas, and currently owns and operates Panoptic Productions, LLC, a film and photo production company in Denver, and works with NBCUniversal as a global media technician for their international broadcasting division. So join me in welcoming our guests. So that's kind of the the sort of informational rundown, right, of what you're doing now, some of what the skills and so forth that you're kind of putting towards that. But really the first question I want to ask both of you, and either of you can jump in here, is what's sort of the story that you tell about your path from graduation with the communications BA to where you are now? Like how did you sort of use some of those skills? How did that sort of like bridge point of graduating into where you are now kind of emerge? And how do you sort of tell that story in ways that kind of foreground some of what you learned as a communications
I'll go first. I actually found out what I wanted to do by literally attending one of these panels. One of the alumni, I don't know if any of you know Lisa Hansen here on campus. She works for your Alumni Association. But she was on one of these panels. And previously I always thought, oh, event planning, that doesn't really sound that hard. That doesn't sound very interesting. Whatever, no big deal. And then she talked about everything and I fell in love. I immediately was like, cool, I want to do that. So yeah, when I was here as a student, I also worked for CSU RAM Events and then CSU Compass and Event Services. And yeah, I think throughout my classes, I just realized I really loved writing. I liked technical writing and kind of also knew I was really interested in marketing, copywriting, that sort of thing. So yeah, that led me into my career as an event planner and communications specialist. What else? What am I missing?
I mean, I think
How I got here.
It's a great advertisement for the alumni panel, which everyone has already read to. So if you can figure out what you want to do at the very panel that you're at. So, excellent.
Yeah, for me, after graduating, I'm a very visual media person. So after graduating, I was looking for different companies to work for, and NBC actually had a broadcasting office in Centennial, Colorado. And I lived very close to there, and they wanted some bright young folks to start working for them. So I got into that job, and that was very intricate international broadcasting through TV. And I worked at CTV for a little bit, so I kind of learned the very basics of TV broadcasting. And then so I learned that kind of very back post production side. And then to create my own stuff, I started my own company and just doing all types of visual media and using communication all throughout that process, putting yourself in other people's shoes and just creating that network of people that you create with.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I mean, you both sort of touched on it in your answers, but what do you think are some of the most important skills that you developed as a communication student, or that you just kind of like put to use in your careers and in your lives too, sort of post graduation to now?
So, well, I did a lot of film studies here, so that's where I kind of got my background, like philosophy in how to craft stories and films and photos and stuff like that. And all the technical stuff I kind of like learned on my own, but the reason why I'm doing those things all came from the academic studies here. And then just the philosophies of like media with Dr. Marx, like learning about all of like those things. I was very mindful of when I'm creating all these different videos and stuff for different clients, just knowing how powerful this video medium can be.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. And then writing, just practicing so much writing really got me to where I am. That's a huge part of what I do currently. Part of the interview process for my job, I don't know what interviews are quite like in your field, but I had to do an AP style test for my current job. So yeah, just without some of those skills, I really wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't gotten that knowledge here.
Yeah, no, I think that sort of dovetails with another question that I have, which we can think about this in terms of interview process, or just like generally kind of working or being a human in the world, right? But what do you think is one of the most important things that our seniors here, our capstone students here, or seniors in general, right, can do to prepare themselves for sort of post-college life, right? Again, or for eventual job interviews or what have you. Like what's a really important thing that they can do right now?
I think attending things like this and just any sort of networking event that you can go to, truly, the more people you know in this industry, the better. At least for me, I have gotten where I am just based off the people I know as well. And just do informational interviews with people. Don't be afraid to ask people just to meet one-on-one. I've met with so many students just to help them out in that aspect. I know that there are so many people that would be willing to sit down over a cup of coffee with you guys and just talk about how they got where they got and how they can help you. So
yeah, I would say definitely networking with people and getting a mentor. So someone that is doing what you want to do, just hang out with them and do stuff with them, and just have them kind of teach you little by little along the way. You can kind of see, like, is this like the type of job I want to be doing? Because I'm doing it with them. So I think I had a mentor and it really helped me.
Right. Yeah, I think students often have questions about networking, right? Like how to do it. What are some of the best ways to sort of go about that, and in ways where you're doing so in kind of an earnest way. So right, where it feels like, where it doesn't feel phony, right? But you want to get to know people and that sort of thing. So do you have advice sort of on your own, based on your own experiences with networking, or stories from kind of your own from doing that yourselves, in terms of good ways to go about that, or sort of getting a mentor, making connections, that sort of thing, or conversely, things to avoid?
Yeah, I would say everyone is as nervous as you are. So it's not, try not to be so intimidated by new people. Yeah.
I would add to that I feel like there's a networking group for everything. Honestly, just hop on Google and search around for some local groups that are meeting together to talk about things, whether it's marketing or digital design work. Everybody's looking for other people's opinions on hey, how do you do this in Photoshop? Or, hey, when you're speaking with a client about social media, like how do you send them this, that, and the other thing? There's a group for everything. What else was I gonna add to that? But I agree. Everybody's as nervous as you are, and everybody just wants to connect with each other. So don't be afraid to make those connections.
Yeah, I mean, I that very much aligns with my own experiences as well, right? Like it's easy to think you're the only one who's trying to network or sort of make those connections, right? But people love talking about what they do and what they're interested in, right? So, I have sort of one other question kind of connected to that before, at least for a bit, I want to make sure that we have a lot of time to get to your questions as well. But we've been sort of thinking about like networking, communication skills, things you've learned, that sort of thing. Are there times you can point to or moments you can point to or ways that you use some of the kind of like interpersonal communication skills that you sort of learned and honed during your time at CSU, kind of in your own careers, positions, lives, and so forth?
For me, completely. I have to meet with clients all of the time when it comes to planning events, working with other event personnel in the industry, whether that's a caterer, someone with a venue, a rental company, something like that, as well as for me, public facing too, any sort of public communications that we do. I lead a lot of tour groups at Northern Water. So I would say just personal skills when it comes to that, customer service. I lean heavily on everything I learned.
Yeah, for me, it's meeting with clients who want a certain product and just being very like an active listener about that, because I'm an artist, but also they need something specific. So it's that back and forth communication of what do they want, what do I want for them, and interpersonal communications it's always constantly happening. So.
I think to add to that, learning what other people's communication styles are will really help you. Everybody prefers to communicate differently. So I have different clients that would rather talk on the phone, different clients that prefer email or text or meeting in person. So
It's also cross-cultural too. So
yeah, absolutely.
I studied abroad with an international business communications course, and we learned about how different cultures run business versus like American culture. So being mindful of that.
Great. Well, why don't we turn it over to all of you, we've got a nice big crowd assembled here. I'm sure you've got a bunch of questions and things, and please don't be shy to toss our way. So yeah, any questions from the group? I also have plenty more I can ask, but I don't want to hog it.
What type of cultural things did you have to go through with the stuff?
I mean, there's so many different countries and cultures. Well, when I was studying abroad in Italy, it was very more relaxed and understanding there's a big machismo culture there, and I'm currently shooting a film in Samoa, and they're very different culture there. So just being open and just being receptive of just the way they work there, because you're in their home. So just being receptive and respectful, learning and just kind of mimicking what they're doing, make them feel more comfortable. Okay, yeah.
But this is more about your film stuff, and you talk about Italy. Are you more like Italian new wave, where on the streets, non-actors or more production, like studios with like experienced actors?
Yeah.
So,
Well, my company is called Panoptic Productions, which means seeing everything from one point of view. So I'm like documentary narrative stuff as well. But when I was studying abroad in Italy, that was more like business focused. We did watch like Italian New Wave films because it was still like a media class. But yeah. So documentaries and like production stuff as well.
Those of you in my digital media class, we're learning about, we've been talking about the Panopticon. So that's seeing everything from one point. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah, way in the back. Sorry if I missed you. I'm trying to.
Can you like tell me like the time that you guys maybe felt like unprepared or really challenged post-grad? And just kind of like what that experience was like?
I think for me, like your 20s is kind of hard. You're just kind of thrown into the world. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, I felt for me, my first challenge was really just my first job. You have to learn so much on the fly, at least in the event world too. A lot of it is learn as you go, learn as you plan events. I guess a time where I didn't feel as prepared was my first site visit with the venue. I didn't really quite understand what questions I needed to ask. But again, a lot of the clients that I worked with had kind of done it before and, helped walk me through it. But once, after that point, I felt confident enough for the next one and the next and the next. Yeah, I think nobody really prepares you for the fact that like you don't see your friends anymore every day. Your friends move away. Things are a little bit different. So really, again, just going back to like keeping your connections open, making sure that you're connecting with new people. Anything like that will really help you.
Yeah, for me, I'm thinking about the first like unpaid gigs I would have, taking photos for like different events and like stuff like that, where because I wasn't getting paid, it's like, well, I'm trying to like practice, and the people that were hiring me were like, yeah, like just try it out. So I wasn't afraid to fail because it was kind of just like this like open space where I was like just trying to figure stuff out and figure out how to use my camera and all that type of stuff.
Was it worth it?
It was worth it.
And don't be afraid to tell people that you don't have the answer. Just, let them know. I can get back to you on that. I'm not quite sure. It's a great question. And I think we all do that in life, but don't be afraid to let them know you don't know yet. You're willing to learn. Yeah.
What was the best advice that you've gotten throughout your whole college experience, and how did that advice carry you through life after college?
Yeah.
Think about the two things you love most in life and have the second one be your job.
For me, everybody just told me to dabble a little bit in everything. I actually call myself a dabbler. I mean, a few of my coworkers like to call ourselves that because we do a little bit of everything. So I say just try as many things that you can, as figure out exactly what you're interested in. Even though I love events, I also figured out I really like digital design. I like to edit videos. I'm not near as cool as Joel, but figure out, kind of what you like to do, but some other things too. You can try a little bit of everything in this field. At least that's why I chose it. But yeah.
I'm going to jump in real quick and echo something that both Jen and Joel have mentioned, and that's in any new like work situation, new social situation. I love how you highlighted that. You're going to drift away from like your kind of friend group maybe, or the identity that you had in college. You might move, you might take on a new sort of career position. So you're going to be in a lot of newness right away. Ask questions instead of making statements. Instead of barging into a new situation and declaring, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, rise and grind, entrepreneurship, hustling, I'm just repeating things I saw on Instagram this morning. I'm sorry. You'll make friends, connections, learn things. My God, you'll learn things even after college by asking questions. Where are you from? What do you do? How did you get here? How does that work? Tell me about that, right? That mode of needing to declare who you are right away can be like comfortable, right? That's like a default for many of us. But in the long run, you'll get further by sort of being curious, taking a backseat to others, especially in those new situations.
Yeah, you felt that before your first years of coming here. It's new, and you're saying, "Hey, my name is. What do you do?" Like, it's really just kind of similar situation, similar feeling.
And I think imposter syndrome is a real thing, but also trust your skills. You all have so much knowledge. You learned so much here. You know more than you think. Don't be afraid to also show it. But yeah, ask questions. I still ask questions every day.
Since you guys have been out of school, have you been interested in a particular topic that you'd like to take additional classes on, or have you considered going back to grad school?
For me, at least I wanted to learn a little bit more about the digital world. So I took an Adobe Creative Cloud course through the Digital Workshop Center here in Fort Collins. I did consider a master's degree for a little bit. Not right now. It could be something I might pursue again in the future, but yeah, there's a lot of online classes, especially post-pandemic, that you can take to that really help in this field.
Yeah, I was thinking about an associate degree in business, just because I do have my own company, kind of separating the art side of my brain to the business side. And I could use a little bit more business help, but yeah, in the future.
That's a great question. We often get asked about, professors often get asked about grad school as people who went to grad school, and I always say, like, only do it if you feel like you absolutely have to for your for what you want to do, either in life or work or that sort of thing. I mean, I think it's like, it's never something to do just because you can't think of anything else to do, right? And I think that these are good. Like, I like how your responses kind of highlight the sort of intentionality that you had or have about, like, well, here are certain kinds of skills or competencies or what have you that I want to pick up, and so here are some kind of spaces that I can look for how and where to do that, right? So yeah, great. Other questions?
How did you feel that, like, the communications degree prepared you for, for lack of a better word, like adulting? Like, Joel, like, you started your own company, like, that's freaking crazy. So, like, how did you feel that this space prepared you for that?
It just comes back to, like, understanding that we're all, like, vulnerable humans. So with our communication knowledge, like, we have a step up from everyone else. So, like, I get reminded of this story of my friend, and his dad is an engineer, and he was talking about how his coworkers are so bad at communicating that they can't even write an email. So, like, he has to, like, walk over and, like, talk to them in person. And I thought that was very interesting because they're so smart in one aspect, but they can't, like, write a normal email to communicate an idea or something. So, like, we have all of these, like, tools that give us the upper hand. So I don't know, in terms of adulting, just like, I know you're human, I'm human, like, I have a question, I don't know how to do this, like, can you help me out?
Yeah, and I think a degree in general really sets you up for success. It teaches you time management, it teaches you how to balance a lot of things. But truly, this degree, you have skills that others don't. I can relate to that. Literally, our engineers at work send us an email and they say, can you write a press release about this? And you should see what they send us. We have to understand it, digest it, and then regurgitate it in a way that the general public will understand. Yeah, and I think it's just the continual practice really set us up for that success.
So what advice do you have for someone that has a communications background that's going into the creative industry post-college?
What do you mean specifically? Just general advice?
Yeah. And anything that you've done, mainly directed tools that you can
Yeah.
build and whatnot.
Like, so creative stuff. My favorite word is intention. So think about your intention of what you want to do in your creative field. And that will be your anchor for when you get confused or you get sidetracked, to just come back to the intention of why you're making that thing. Yeah.
Are there any jobs in your industry that you've encountered that you didn't even know existed that are interesting, or even like a skill set that you were like, I didn't even know if that was something that could help me?
Yes. I have to think of some examples. Maybe.
I don't know, I outsource a lot of my work through like Fiverr for like editing stuff. So it's a tool.
I'll tack on briefly with my non-like academic experience. I worked for a political communication firm in Texas before going back to grad school, and I thought I'd literally be in like the Texas Capitol talking to important politicians and doing like the work of activism and politics. But for the most part, it was doing document research. It was looking up like records. It was navigating databases, submitting FOIA requests. It was sitting and looking at all the dumb, boring stuff on the internet that isn't TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. That was a whole universe of jobs that only started at the level of politics. So seeking out, organizing, and making sense of information, whether it's in the context of an engineer giving you something unintelligible and saying, hey, make this make sense for the rest of the public, to discovering and organizing information for other folks, is a huge part of just about any sort of like service industry, social media universe, content creation, right? Any of the sort of communication fields that you folks go into will have a heavy kind of information search and reprocessing component to it, like finding something out, translating that for a different audience, or being a connector from one party to another, stuff that you've been practicing in your classes with us for the past several years.
Yeah, I think every business or organization out there really has a communications department. So really, when you think about it, you can be a communicator with any sort of topic too. I mean, I never thought I would be working for Northern Water. You know, I thought, okay, only engineers work there. What am I going to do there? But yeah, so that's a good example. In our department too, we also have, we call him our scribe as a joke, but in our board meetings, he takes notes during all of the board meetings and compiles them and keeps record of all of them. And yeah, there's still some more old school positions like that too.
I'm glad you made that point, because I think one of the things that you know, I've talked with this and talk about this with many students, right? And we all know it's not true, right? But a common misconception about communication, communications degree, right, is that it's, you know, perhaps too diffuse or like sort of an easy degree, or what do you apply it to or whatever. But I think that's like a great example of how like widely and broadly applicable the degree is, right? Where, you know, virtually you use communication in virtually sort of any job, any career, and virtually any firm has a communications sort of department, right? So one of the questions that I have sort of along those lines is like, how do you translate or explain how you use communications in your jobs or careers, right? Like how might, or how might you sort of translate or explain those skills in a job interview? How do you sort of explain how you use these skills in your job to other people, sort of within your profession or otherwise?
I think in a lot of interviews, people might ask you for writing samples or samples of your creative work. So I would say just keep practicing on those. Any writing samples you have from school are applicable. Those totally count. Yeah, and then I think what's really cool in this field is you have a lot of real world experience. For me at Northern Water, we're building a new reservoir by Carter Lake, Chimney Hollow. So a lot of it is us just going on site and meeting with the project managers out there, asking them, okay, what's new with the construction? What are updates on the project? And we take that and either make a video or do a news article or a social media post, anything like that. So I think a lot of it is just done out in person too. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess for my field, it's a lot of like walking and talking. So when you get somewhere, it's not sitting down, like we're actually like moving around and kind of just like going with the flow of like what's happening, whether it's like on set doing something or when you're editing something, just like getting right into it. But yeah, like it's always a constant flow of using your interpersonal communication skills and all the other like media skills.
I think too, sometimes taking that information and thinking about how there might be a different side to tell the story. Taking that example of us building a new reservoir, there, might be some people that are against water storage in that way. And so how can we approach that topic in a way where we're educating it and, telling a different story and not just telling it from our side, and realizing there are a lot of different viewpoints.
I've got plenty more, but I don't want to. Well, so I'll throw another one out there, which is that you both work in areas. I suppose this is true of pretty much any profession and area, right? Which has seen significant changes, at least certainly over the last couple of years, right? But not exclusively that, right? But how have you seen your profession, your sort of workplace, how have you seen that change recently? What are some of the kind of major changes that you've seen, encountered, experienced? And how might students sort of best position themselves now to fit within kind of, these sort of changing professions?
Digital is huge. It's changed even in the 8 years since we've graduated. People want to see video. They like to see photos still. They like to read, but people like to watch a video. So yeah, what you do, you'll be in business for a while. But I think on top of that, of course, we all have Zoom fatigue, but I don't think Zoom's going anywhere. Video communication in that way. It really is convenient in many other ways too. For scheduling meetings, you're not driving across town all the time, you're not running from this to that. So a lot of that has changed, but also being mindful of old ways of communicating too. I think there are benefits to meeting a person, of course. Yeah, just a lot has moved online, and anything you can do to hone your skills there will really set you up for position.
Yeah, there's been a lot of like technological changes, so just staying tapped into what's happening now and what you think is going to happen in the future. Like I really think VR is going to be a big thing. So if you're in any type of visual media, like start thinking like ahead instead of like what's changing in the past, like what's going to be like the next thing coming up. So that's where you can be creative, is thinking outside of the box there.
Too really quickly just on that. I think it can be sometimes a challenge to convince older audiences that that's the way to go. And, you know, maybe we should post a video on Instagram, maybe we should get an Instagram. A lot of them don't really see the point or don't think it's that important. And I think just showing them like, well, hey, let me try this out and then let's take a look at the analytics and see how we feel then and kind of tweak from there. I think that's a challenge too.
Do you have like portfolios, or is that like a huge thing for you too, or is like, because I know I feel like feeling you'd have to have like a whole bunch of pictures, like all I have to show like your company that you're trying to apply for, or like even like you being a digital place, have to have all your pictures. And let's say, is portfolio the way to go?
I would say so, absolutely.
I have a reel because I'm visual, so it's send me your reel. you know, everything. Resumes are still applicable as well. So resume and reel for me.
Yeah, and kind of, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I had to submit writing samples for my current position. So I submitted, you know, an article I wrote, some social media posts I had along with the analytics, some other different writing samples, some digital design work. Yeah, anything like that is.
I imagine that's a good place too, where you kind of can learn from people who are currently sort of doing that, right? In terms of how to put that stuff together, both logistically, but also just kind of, you know, best practices and putting together a portfolio or a reel or what have you. Because yeah, that sort of thing doesn't necessarily come to us naturally, right? Yeah.
Since you two graduated 8 years ago, and it seemed like you both sort of had an idea of what you wanted to do, and so you left like with an idea or like a dream in mind, did you think that you would be here when you graduated?
I think for me, yes. I didn't think I would be at a company like this necessarily. I started out actually working for a local rental company and doing weddings and festivals primarily, which was really fun, but I was feeling burnt out pretty quickly. So I wanted a more structured schedule. And I also was kind of leaning more on my marketing towards the end of that job and really discovered that I really liked that. So I wanted to find something that was kind of a good split of those things, which I found in this job. And then I wanted to do something that would kind of impact the community a little bit more. So yeah, I didn't necessarily know I'd end up here, but I'm glad that I did.
Do you mean here like CSC or like in our career?
Just like in your career.
I think so. Like I started my company at the beginning of 2020 because I didn't want to wait to be greenlit by anyone. So I was working a lot for like other companies and like other productions and just getting like a day rate, and like that was it. And it's really hard to like get your stuff picked up and like try to get like on Netflix or something like that. So I just went the indie route and just did my own thing, and I think I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I had a question that, you know, sort of dovetails with that, which I think, you know, working independently or working in an organization, right? Like one of the things that I often talk to students about, right, is kind of balancing or figuring out how to balance sort of personal values and principles with like professional, you know, goals and obligations, right? This might be a bit of a vague or sort of abstract question, but like, how have you navigated that in your own sort of lives and careers, right? Like balancing kind of personal goals, desires, principles, values, that sort of thing with, you know, things that you need to do for your job and to make a living, and maybe those line up exactly, right? But sometimes maybe they don't. Yeah, I'm just interested in kind of how you navigated that.
I would say going back to just the word intention of like balancing working in life is coming back to that intention of why you're working and like why you're doing what you do. Just reminding yourself that whatever that may be.
Yeah, I think I knew I wanted to work for a place that was open-minded and accepting of new ideas. A place that was diverse. Inclusive, and a place that also, for me, just was environmentally friendly. Some of those aspects I really want in the company.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those answers, because yeah, that's something that, especially in Capstone, you know, is I often for that. So I know that's at the forefront of people's minds. Other questions? Yeah.
I just have a quick question, and if you don't mind my recording the answer personally, thank you. Have you ever had a moment where you questioned if you had made the right career choice throughout your time?
I have. Yeah, I mean, I knew I really liked events, but sometimes I kind of wondered, you know, am I going to burn out on that pretty quickly? Some of those jobs don't pay very well. And that's kind of when I discovered, hey, I can lean a little bit more on my marketing skills too, and kind of really strengthen those. Not only do they go hand in hand with events, but I also knew that if I needed to, I could lean on that and kind of go that route and try something different in that job. Yeah, but I think all within the same field, just kind of deciding what my niche was.
Yeah, I'd say for me, in like the film industry, it's like really hard, like 12, 13-hour days up on your feet doing everything. And that's something I kind of just got dropped into, and it's not the easiest thing to do. So I learned that kind of the hard way, is that's not easy. But yeah, and then just like working with other people's ideas where you might not agree with certain things, but it's in the end, it's kind of like their project. So that's why I started kind of doing my own stuff, and what I thought was like true to what I believed in. And it made it less hard. Still hard.
Yeah, I think that's I know of, I don't think, I know of basically no one who has never had that moment of, at least at some point of questioning, right? No one who has not, yeah, I'm doing a double negative here, but I think, you know. Well, so one other question that I have, which I think kind of overlaps, hopefully not too much with some of the other questions about advice and that sort of thing, which is, you know, sort of looking back, right? Are there pieces of advice or a piece of advice that you like wish you had gotten when you were, you know, a senior about to graduate, right? Like we've talked about good advice that you've gotten, things that are good advice you've received, things that you've you know, sort of realized kind of looking back on. Is there a piece of advice that you wish you would have gotten at that point in life?
I do have one. I think don't settle for the first opportunity that comes your way. I think it kind of has been ingrained in us from previous generations that you have to get a job right out of college. And in my opinion, you don't, because the first job I accepted was for a hotel and I hated it. So I think don't settle. If you know in your gut that it doesn't feel right, you know, wait it out, do what you can. Obviously, the paycheck's important too, but trust yourself and know if it's not a right fit, that's okay. There's going to be something out there. Even if you try something for a little bit and you feel like, you know, like I stick with it so I get my years of experience in so I can move on. Like also make sure your mental health and your happiness is first too.
Yeah, I would say the only constant thing is change. So just learning to adapt to those different things, and like your timeline may not turn out as like how you wanted to, but it's life, and just if you didn't get that job you wanted, there's always something else. Everyone has their own timeline.
I love it. I watched the movie The Bridges of Madison County last night. A great film, by the way. And I bring this up because Clint Eastwood's character in that says basically pretty much something very much along those lines, which is like the only thing we can count on is change. If we know we can rely on it, then change becomes comforting. And I was like, yeah, great to hear that come back. Anyway, didn't expect to invoke Bridges of Madison County. Any other questions? And
Yeah, I'll switch over for Dr. Elkins. If you folks need to head off to your next class, that's okay, but I'm gonna stick around for the next 10 or 15 minutes if you want to continue hanging out. So we, well, okay.
For those in my digital media.
Sorry, the closer's coming on. Yeah, I'll put the lights on and off and start kicking out. So I feel like we do these sessions, you folks spend a lot of time in your capstone classes talking about jobs, and there's so much desperation around like, what the hell am I going to do to get a job and secure a paycheck? And it's totally understandable because we live in late capitalist hell, right? Where like everybody's got more money than us, and it seems like people are thriving more than we are. But I wonder if you two could share absolutely any advice, experience outside of your professional lives, things that you picked up here in the communication studies department that weren't job related, skills, experiences you had in your time here that you bring with you to your lives now that aren't job related. You mentioned work-life balance a couple of times, Joel, and I think that's an important thing to like keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah. The two things you love have to second to your job. So keep something that doesn't involve money, that you can just like hang out and like do, and keep that like your sacred like thing.
What is that for you?
I like riding bikes. So I've been biking a lot, but
Mountain or road?
Huh?
Mountain or road bike?
I have like a single speed thing, but yeah, I always have these fantasies of like, I'm just gonna stop whatever I'm doing and open and work at a bike shop and just do stuff, just build bikes. And I'm like, after 5 years, I'm gonna hate coming in and doing bikes, and I'm gonna want to do something else. So yeah, keeping that. And then I don't know, a lot of like nonverbal communication, like body language and stuff like that. Is I'm very mindful of that.
So even when you're in a non-working scenario, hanging with friends.
I'm like, yeah, my friend needs to go. Like, he doesn't look like he wants to be here. You can go, dude.
Yeah, or I'm like a huge crime junkie person, but yeah, watching those shows, I'm like, oh yeah, that guy did it. And my boyfriend's always like, how did you know that? You can just tell, like you can read his body language. But like in an alternate world, maybe I'd be in criminal investigations. But yeah, I was gonna say something else. Oh, I think yeah, just my experiences here, I learned so many things from so many different people and people that think differently than I did. So I feel like now I'm more of an open person than I used to be. And I love to learn from other people. And again, kind of goes back to, I don't know if any of you are super interested in journalism specifically, but journalism is so great because you can learn so many different things by just writing about it and talking to people. But yeah, even in your everyday life, it really just helps you just make new connections. And
What does everyone here want to do?
yeah.
Yeah, now that only the real ones are left. Like let's get real. Like
Yeah, let us know.
bare your soul. What are you like most terrified of in your prospective job field? Like ask the question that you're ashamed, embarrassed to ask in front of everybody else. Yeah,
Okay.
you don't have to. I'm
But we want you to.
Yeah.
COVID for like a communication person, I don't know how everyone else felt, but it was like living through my hell.
Yeah.
And so like all of my filters are gone. So how have you like seen post-pandemic, like, how do you deal with people? Like, that sounds really terrible, because like I love people, but I'm also like seeing this many folks in here today, I was sort of like, is this allowed? Like,
Right on,
can
yeah,
we have this many
same.
people in here?
Oh, completely. I think for me, at some of the events I've been planning, so at Northern Water, we have a lot of old school thinkers. We have a lot of like farmers who grew up on farms working there and think a little bit differently about it than some others might. So some of the time when we were planning these events, I felt like I was the only one in the room that was like, so, but COVID, like, can we meet in person? Is this too many people? Do I need to get a bigger space? Do we need to spread out? Do I need to have masks ready? That sort of thing. And so be mindful about it. And, you know, I say just do it, and it makes people feel comfortable, even if nobody grabs a mask. I think it's just the courteous thing to do. And that's just an example. But
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Just be mindful of what everyone wants to do. I shot a video piece outside, and I brought my mask, and they're like, "It's fine, we're outside." I'm like, okay, but at least I did it. So,
Right.
But yeah, as a communication person, the whole online remote thing is kind of unnatural, but kind of getting back in the swing of things for today.
I think there's gonna continue to be for at least a year and at least another couple of variants, just this weird, like, you're gonna go back and forth between being fully remote and everybody masking. And yeah, you see the guidance yesterday that's, we don't have to do it on planes anymore. And I'm a big fan of connecting with other folks through vulnerability, through like sharing your freak out session with whatever experience you're in. I know that's not everyone's speed, but as I was mentioning a little bit earlier, I promise you'll make more and better connections by putting yourself out there a little bit and not just sort of charging in with like, this is who I am, I'm in charge, I'm the one to be listened to. And part of that, I think, is checking in with folks saying, are you freaked out by that? This is weird, right? Like, what should we do? Do you feel comfortable? COVID related and otherwise. I think there's going to be a lot of having to do that. Check in with your folks, your family, your loved ones.
right. Yeah, it was new for everyone. Everyone was going through it together. And kudos to you all for doing it with school. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Crazy. But going back to what you said too, I think just being flexible and adaptable and resilient, you know, just the more lenient you can be about things, that will really help you. It's hard to stay rigid in this industry, and it'll only cause you frustration and headaches. So just keep thinking outside of the box and keep being flexible.
Give yourselves credit for doing this too. Anytime one of the older generations tells you, you didn't go through what I went through in my day,
Yeah.
you look at them and say, I went through another effing global pandemic.
Yeah.
I did, my entire life was radically upended by this thing for 2 years. Y'all deserve some credit for doing that too. Like, use that as a sort of buoying mechanism for yourself. Maybe time for one more question from you folks.
If you could give like your fresh out of college self one piece of advice, I know you kind of talked about like not getting attached to your first job and that kind of thing, but just even like about the transition from school life to work life. Is there something you like look back on and wish you would have like known or, you know, thought about differently?
I think on a personal level, just continue to make plans with people, and always have something to look forward to when you get home from work, especially when it's a new job. It's hard and it's stressful and you come home exhausted and you question a lot of things. Did I do that well? Did I do that right? And also just give yourself grace, give yourself credit. But yeah, continue to make plans, continue to meet up with people, or find a new hobby. I found out I love kickboxing. Just try something new, yeah.
Yeah, I would say kind of what I said earlier is everyone is as scared as you are. So just putting yourself in their shoes and being like, don't be scared to ask questions and be vulnerable again. because when you go out into the real world, it's money's involved and people are spending money and time, and now you're here and you feel like maybe I shouldn't be here. Like it's okay. You're supposed to be where you are. And so yeah, just don't be scared. Just like let it happen.
I think there can be a fine line between feeling like you have to pay your dues and maybe work overtime a little bit, but also respecting yourself and your own boundaries. So kind of figuring out what that means for you.
Does anyone here already have something lined up already? Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna be working at a staffing agency. In Denver, so like outsourced HR sort of situation.
That sounds fun.
Well, why don't we formally end, and if you folks want to stick around for a minute and come and meet Joel and Jenna, that if you're willing to hang for a minute, please join me in giving our guests a round of applause. Thank you.